eventually you get absorbed in, and you are Sonic.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to No Repeat, a podcast where we pick 3 songs every week with no repeats and no do-overs to create a perfect playlist for every occasion life throws at you. Joining me are my co-hosts, Tyler Reed.
Folks, I got just 2 notes from last episode. 1, I already miss Michael. I want them back. We should have guests more often. I love the wild, chaotic energy they bring sometimes. And 2, Taylor, I'm sorry, I pushed your rave clown out of the friend group. I feel like we're all cool except for Taylor's weird rave clown, and I like to apologize, and you could be in our friend group. I didn't mean to start drama.
Those are serious allegations against Tina Spirit, the only 90s clown-themed drag queen, and I resent that.
It was a great idea. You did a great job.
And, of course, my other co-host is here, Sean Evans, who wasn't mean to my drag sona. Hi, Sean. Thanks for being here.
Anytime, buddy. I'm an ally.
That's right. Tyler's out here just reading me to filth, which is, of course, now that it's his challenge this week, one that he picked, I guess it's only fair that I get to destroy him.
Wait, I didn't choose this at all.
You absolutely did. I have in my notes here that you wrote this challenge on the board. Tyler, what is this challenge?
This week, we're challenged to find the perfect song for when the Ouija board doesn't work. What does that mean? I don't know. I don't remember. I wrote it, but I don't remember why or how.
Well, that's just too dang diddly bad. Tyler, if people want to submit their own challenges so we can stop feuding, where can they do that?
Hey, everybody. If you want to submit your own challenges, you can DM us on Instagram or Twitter at NoRepeatPod, or you can always send us a big, long email at norepeatpod@gmail.com.
All right. So, like Tyler said, this challenge, when the Ouija board doesn't work, we really don't know where it came from. Did it emerge from the Ouija board of Tyler's mind? It's unclear. And because of that, I really struggled with this one. This was one where I saw the little item in my to-do list of start listening to songs for this week's episode. And it was Thursday, and I was like, no. And then on Friday, it was like, start listening to songs. And I was like, no. And then finally, on Saturday evening, when I was drinking some wine and doing a jigsaw puzzle, as you do, as an elder millennial in quarantine, I thought, you know what's a good energy for right now? A seance. Let's do some seance music. And let me just say, when you type seance music into both Google and Apple Music, you don't get anything good. I was getting straight trash, and I struggled so hard this week. I just wanted something kind of creepy, but also kind of like, it just didn't, it didn't land because, the Ouija board's not working. You're not actually summoning the spirits. It's like when you're a teenager and you're like, oh, it's so spooky, let's do the Ouija board, and then nothing happens. I was trying to go for that vibe where it feels spooky until it isn't, and I was striking out left and right, boys. I landed on something, but it took me a long time. How did you guys do?
Similarly, I had no idea what I was going to do for this. Like I said, I barely even remembered that I wrote it. And so you're right that the Ouija board not working implies that maybe there isn't something scary. But I think there's a certain sort of, it's almost like a nihilistic sort of interpretation, like God is dead or whatever. And it's there's no voices out there that can hear you, and sort of screaming into the abyss or whatever. So in a way, there's something creepy in the not knowing or not hearing of anything. But also, Ouija boards, apparently the way that they work is that you put your hands on them, and whether you want to or not, you are going to move it. And you will subconsciously move it in the direction that you want it to go, whether you intend to or not. And so either way, it's sort of a little creepy. And it's sort of there's a sort of almost I kind of noticed both of your your picks had almost like a love element to them, and there's like a forewarning element to it, or like a sort of like that kind of element to it. I think for me, I just kind of want something that felt uncomfortable, something that just evoked a sort of uneasiness. And then, I do think that it was the right kind of call to kind of pick something that was like a cult adjacent. And so I just kind of picked something that kind of went into that zone.
So this week was I'm glad that your guys' is kind of upbeat, because mine is a little bit sad. Like, mine is more of maybe it's love, but not really in a romantic. It's more like a fraternal kind of thing for me. And I mean, granted, I used another Queens of the Stone Age song, so just apologies up front, but I feel like this song has been stuck in my head. And when I was thinking about this challenge this week, because I usually turn it in on Sundays, but not this late. And I almost did it earlier this week, and I flip-flopped and kind of looked around for stuff, and then didn't. But I think in my mind, like, for this challenge, reading it independently, as I seem to always have done since episode 100, was more of like you were in the middle of like a seance or something, and then your Ouija board broke. So it was kind of like the song that would communicate the message that I'd want to send if I didn't get a chance to speak to or ask questions or speak to the person on the other side. We're just assuming that that's how it works. I know that it's like Ouija boards don't always act like that, but I feel like sometimes there's like, something a little bit there, like it breaks the bounds that separate things, I guess. It gives you the optimism there. So when that optimism is taken away, like what would you want to communicate? And that's kind of what I went for this week. We can get more into that in the challenge, but
that is definitely a different interpretation, and I like that you're really going into the emotional aspect of like how the Ouija board would be used. That does, I guess, kind of lead me to the obvious question, though. Have either of you actually used a Ouija board?
Not that I can remember.
I haven't either.
Neither have I.
Wow, 3 for 3. I was expecting, Taylor, you asked that so pointedly. I figured you might have.
No, surprisingly, I haven't. I mean, I definitely don't think I would have in high school, because I come from not a like fundamentalist religious family, but a religious family that just probably wouldn't have like been super jazzed about the idea. Although they certainly wouldn't have been like, demons, expel them, But then in college, I like had some pagan friends and some friends who were into Eastern spiritualities and things, and it just like I was very adjacent to this kind of thing, but never really like engaged with it. And so I did a little bit of reading on it this week, and like, it's basically exactly what Tyler talked about with like, you put your hands on it, and then supposedly subconsciously or through spirit forces, you move the planchette around and it spells things out. What I didn't realize was a similar form of automatic writing was used as far back as 1100 AD in China, which is just kind of interesting. But also that the Ouija board itself was really popularized in the 1880s during the spiritualist movement, and a lot of the earliest use of it was in Ohio, where we're all from.
Interesting.
Apparently there was a big spiritualist revival in Ohio in the 1880s, and it was widely reported on, and that's when Ouija boards kind of came to the U.S. consciousness, and then it was officially named and copyrighted in 1890 by a businessman in Baltimore, Maryland.
Didn't take long. Capitalism strikes again.
Yeah, and now you can buy Ouija, I think, that are made by Hasbro? It's either Hasbro or Milton Bradley, but one of the big American game companies. Some notable users of the Ouija board include Bill Wilson, the co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous.
Okay.
Native Akranian.
There is an urban legend that Vincent Furnier came up with his stage name, Alice Cooper, using a Ouija board. He has since dispelled this theory.
Ah, man.
And one of our collective favorite bands and favorite albums of all time, the Mars Volta's Bedlam and Goliath, was written largely using a Ouija board for stream of consciousness lyric writing.
Incredible.
That's cool.
Yeah, according to their story, Omar Rodriguez Lopez purchased one while traveling in Jerusalem. At first, the board provided a story which became the theme for the album. Strange events allegedly related to this activity occurred during the recording of the album. The studio flooded, one of the album's main engineers had a nervous breakdown, equipment began to malfunction, and vocalist Cedric Bixler-Zavala's foot was injured. Following these bad experiences, the band buried the Ouija board.
It's a good idea. That sounds about right.
The more you know.
I think there's like one thing too about the Ouija board is kind of iconic in its design sense, I feel like I've seen it in a bunch of places on clothing and on bandanas and on boards, and like the font itself is pretty iconic. The shape of the Ouija board, like I don't know what you want to call it. It looks like like the Ouija board plectrum maybe is what you'd want to call it. But it's just like there's so much about it that
it's very evocative.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of went into maybe the sonic aesthetic that we were all building on this week. There's a certain like aesthetic of creepiness that I felt like needed to be there. So with that being said, does anybody want to go first?
Oh, I'll go first. We'll get the heavy out of the way.
All right, Sean, what do you got for us?
So this week I chose Fortress by Queens of the Stone Age. So kind of alluding to what I spoke about earlier, later 2020 and early 2021 has been a little bit of a rough time for me. I'm pretty sure you guys know. I don't know if I told it on the podcast, but my cat died suddenly in December, and it took a pretty big toll on me. And then a couple weeks ago, I had an aunt that passed away from a very, very hard battle with COVID-19. And I feel really lucky in a sense that we basically, and towards the latter, that we've been in the pandemic for about a year, and I hadn't had anybody that was in my family that was affected by the disease. And knowing that my aunt went through a very serious battle and leaves behind my uncle and 2 children and 2 grandchildren, it's pretty devastating to me. She was a really awesome person and overcame a lot, and like was kind of my inspiration when I was struggling in college, because she was basically like working 2 jobs and going to nursing school and taking care of a family. And it kind of put things into perspective that it really shouldn't be that difficult for me to just show up to class and try hard, because I wasn't really fighting that much of a battle. And I know that she meant a lot to my uncle, and of course as a mother you probably definitely mean a lot to your children. But I know that my mom and dad and aunts and uncles cared about her deeply. And I guess when I think about the Ouija board, and stereotypically speaking, I always associate it with like talking to somebody who is a ghost or who has like passed, right? It's not so much just answer questions or some sort of Bloody Mary, go into the dark bathroom and like say Bloody Mary 3 times and like something happens or something. It's way more of something that you could use as a tether between bounds, right? And I guess this week that was what made it so hard for me to pick a song, was because I just felt like there was, in feeling my loss, if I was doing like a Ouija board and it broke in the middle of it, I would be really like more affected now, just given the fact that like January and December sucked for me on certain levels, and I don't think that there was a lot that was really like wow, this is what a great year. And in 2020, I listened to Fortress a lot, and I thought about like sometimes the softer side of Queens of the Stone Age is really nice because it doesn't always they don't always have to have like all positive or all negative songs. Josh Homme is very good, in my opinion, at kind of threading the needle of explaining things how they are, and it should be a little bit rough, like, but that's what makes it relatable. And Fortress is just a really powerful narrative for me like that if you're really strong, there will be times where you are kind of at a weaker point, but that's not to say that it's not the end. Like, you can get up and you can go to others, and that this is a really positive message for me to have right now, and thinking that there is like others out there that can help you. Sorry. I'm getting a little squishy right now.
I really identify with that sentiment a lot. I think as we approach year 2 of pandemic lockdown, I am really feeling a longing for community in a way that I have not felt probably ever. It's very cliche to say that we took a lot of things for granted before this thing started, but I think one of the things that I particularly took for granted was the people around me in my life who I could easily get a hold of or be around at a moment's notice when like something was challenging or I was going through something. Because to be honest, right now it kind of feels like everybody's going through something all the time. And not just the pandemic, but like the various knock-on effects of it. And it feels like, you know, when this first started, it was really easy to just like call somebody up at random because nobody was doing anything. But now it's like, it takes so much emotional strength to get on a FaceTime call with somebody for a half hour that I have to like schedule interactions with my friends because you just can't do too many of them in a day. Everything's just so heavy right now. And so to have a song that is dark and, you know, a little bit like creepy and minor key, but that has this kind of like codependency message in a healthy way of like, you do not have to do everything alone. Like, you can be dependent on other people when you need to. Like, that's okay. Toxic individualism is not a good thing. And I think, like you said, the lyrics here really thread a nice needle on that. I think musically the song also has a really good tension to it despite not really going anywhere. Like, it's a very drone-based song, which is interesting from them because that's not something they do a lot of. But I kind of dig it. It's kind of mesmerizing. Like, you really sink into it in a way that's kind of like, I don't know, not meditative by any stretch, but like arresting. It feels like this moment. And I think in the kind of like Ouija context, I think it makes sense too, because it does have like a trance-like quality to it, which definitely fits. I don't know. I think it's a smidge long, but I understand why it's as long as it is because it's doing this kind of like drone-y trance-like feeling. I don't know. It sets with me in like an uncomfortable way, so it's kind of hard to talk about.
Right. Because, I mean, if you read through the lyrics, I mean, the song is so long because there's a lot of words to it. There's a lot of stuff going on there, and it's all really engaging. And I feel like Queens of the Stone Age is always a band that, even if I am not like super in love, like specifically like maybe with like the song, but I've always really admired the lyrical content. I think that's definitely one of the best parts about them. And this song definitely resonates with me as well. And Because honestly, just every day, I mean, I've been like waking up really recently, like late at night, and just having very mortal terrors of like existentialism. I'm like, I can feel like I wake up and I can feel myself zooming out of me on the earth in the galaxy, in the universe, and then I scream. And that has happened a lot. And so, like, this is not specifically as to what Sean was talking about or what a Ouija board does, but I do sort of, like, there's something about, like, confronting, having to confront mortality so frequently, so often during this whole pandemic has just been exhausting, so I definitely understand the sentiment. And Sean, I'm sorry for your losses, but I'm really sorry. But yeah, no, I mean, I also just really enjoyed the song. I actually was surprised to have a Queens of the Stone Age song that was a little more on the softer side. And I really enjoyed sort of like the echoiness of the vocals on sort of some of the higher notes. I thought that was a really cool, almost had like a kind of, had a very eerie feeling to it. And kind of like Taylor's saying, there's a sort of like, there's a repetition to it that's kind of also kind of really, it's kind of lulls you into like it's like kind of what Taylor said, kind of like a not trance. I don't want to say trance, but it's, I don't know. I feel like I was so taken back by what Sean said. That was not expecting that the right out the gate.
No, I mean, I understand. I guess to speak to the music of it, I really like the synth sounds on this song. Like, I don't know what synth he uses, or if it's like a modeler synth or something, but it's just like that particular kind of, like, I'm not sure what wave that is just like really, I get what you're saying when you say like the song drones in a way, and it is like 5 minutes long. It does not pass the Evans litmus test of whether or not does a song need to be this long. No, it doesn't. You could probably knock off like 30 seconds on the beginning and about a minute on the front. But I feel like for me, it justifies itself in that it does set a good tone for what the rest of the song is. It doesn't feel like it, to me personally, and this is defending it, that it's longer than it actually needs to be.
I mean, I think it's fun because, like I said, there's a good story there. I really enjoy the simile of the heart is like a fortress, and I feel like sort of like one of my main like mantras sort of is kind of what the song kind of deals with. It's like failure, defeat, or whatever, or loss is going to happen, and you just kind of have to keep going because, like, I don't know, I feel like I really need that sort of like anime protagonist to like, like I'm the hero of my own story to kind of keep me going. And that's not necessarily what this is, but it's sort of like, it's a much more vanilla version of that. That's a little less. But I really, just reading it, lyrics are are really beautiful. I really enjoy them specifically. It's good. I like it. I'm trying to focus more on lyrics this year, I think.
I guess just like in closing, like I guess I really wanted to pick this song because in using the Ouija board, I would just say like, you might not be here anymore, but you're still with me. Like, I think about you all the time.
Well, I can go next. I feel like our songs are stylistically similar. This week, I chose Bad Vibrations by the Black Angels. Black Angels are a psychedelic rock band from Austin, Texas. This is off of their 2010 album, Phosphine Dream. And I discovered this band during this album cycle when I was really into a psychedelic phase in high school. And I don't come back to them often because they have a very, shall we say, specific sound. It all basically sounds like this. But when you're in the mood for this, it's kind of perfect. And I think doing a Ouija board session or doing a seance is kind of the ideal time to listen to Black Angels because they are very creepy, droney American psychedelia Like, everything is echoes and just noise and really like simple drum patterns and just kind of like trance like. And I find that to be a really alluring thing in a way. Like, it has kind of a mysterious danger to it that I really enjoy. And this song in particular, I felt like had the sense of foreboding with which I would approach a Ouija board of like, you know, there is this element of like, you want to talk to the people you've lost, but it's also kind of like, it feels transgressive, like it feels wrong in some way or like unnatural. And this song lyrically is kind of looking back on a complicated relationship and a intimidating ex or friend or someone, like a person who was clearly toxic in your life that gave you bad vibes, but that you kind of couldn't pull yourself away from. And I feel like the Ouija board kind of invites that like complex relationship. And so when you have lines like, you were my best friend, you used my name, you were my worst friend, I felt that way. It's like, there's just a real give and take there in a way. But I think the thing that really like kicks this song to another level is the droney electric guitar that builds and builds into this like manic freak out at the end. Like, it felt like a very Sean pick in that way, where like a song that is very down tempo just immediately like freaks out in the last minute. And I feel like that is like the moment where like the Ouija board like either snaps in half or like the planchette is just like moving all over the place and like indiscernible, like something is clearly wrong here. And that's ultimately why I picked it.
I was gonna point out that exact part at 3:15 when it basically just like double times and goes into this craziness that I really enjoy. Because in the same way that you go through your periods of like, when you want psychedelic, you really want psychedelic. I completely understand that. I can tell when I'm about to go into one of these like periods because it always transitions into Tame Impala, and then it goes into like old Tame Impala, and then totally into psychedelia, and I'm into that. And I feel like in 2010, right when this album came out too, I was like really into them. And this is a really good Ouija board song that just is like, because I get what you're saying too, like, cause I never played on a Ouija board, so I can't relate to how it actually goes down, but it always seems at some point to kind of spiral out of control, right? Like, whether or not you believe that it's, either you're using it to like be a transcendence and talk to somebody who's a spirit or something, or whether it's somebody who's standing there and like pulling it in the direction that it should go. I think that this song embodies that very beautifully, right? And the reverb is really good too in what you said, because this, I think, just in the practice of using a Ouija board, it does kind of take over everything. There's like an interest in it. It must be really difficult to just be in the room while someone's working a Ouija board, right? Because it just seems like there has to be like an ambiance about it. Like, it would be impossible to be like somebody doing a Ouija board and then somebody else like reading a textbook in the back getting ready for chemistry class, you know, and the other side. It just doesn't seem like that should work like that. So the ensuing craziness just makes sense.
Yeah, because I think there's a difference between reaching out to someone that you care about, and then there's like, I'm like a teenager just trying to mess around with the forces that I don't understand. There's like a sort of like you're messing with the wrong spirits kind of vibe, and I feel like if you're just doing it all willy-nilly, I feel like that's like when things can get crazy. Like if you're just like trying to unlock the third eye and find out secrets that you aren't meant to know, I think that's like when trouble starts to happen and when the room starts to shake or whatever. Yeah, so that's exactly the kind of feeling that I feel like Taylor's song evoked for me. There was also just sort of like a high-pitched, like vibrating sound that I can't quite. I mean, it might be a synth, but I don't know. It might be the reverb we were kind of all talking about. That I feel like it was also kind of there. That just sort of gives you this tension. It just right off the bat, it's just sort of like. I think that's the part that gives it the creepiness to it. Because I feel like this would just normally just be like a sort of psychedelia song. You're like, oh, that's fine. You know, that's kind of par for the course. But there's, I think it's with this sort of like high-pitched reverb in the background and just sort of like, what it's got to be like about the chords or something. There's something about like also the guitar chords that also add an element to it. And along with this sort of like this, all these sounds just really add like a really great texture to the song. But yeah, is also a different and good pick.
Yeah, definitely an acquired taste, but if it piques your interest at all, they have like 7 albums of this sound. They've been doing this for a very long time, and it all basically sounds like this. Well, Tyler, that leaves you. What do you have for us?
Sure. Okay. This week I chose Deja Vu by Ataraxia. So Ataraxia was a name that famous Moog synthesizer artist Mort Garson went under for just this album and this album only. I don't know a whole lot about Mort, but he's pretty prolific, had made music for decades and decades. And so he's sort of like one of the pioneers in using the Moog synthesizer, which is like this legendary sound that is, you just hear it and it's unmistakable. Sharp-eared listeners will recall this was from the Adventure Zone Balance, the very first series that the Adventure Zone did. This was the opening theme for it. But I feel like listening to this, I was like, I mean, the album is called Electronic Musical Impressions of the Occult. And so I feel like this song really does embody a sort of 1980s occult sound. Obviously using the right synthesizer for that, but it's got all these like arpeggiated synth notes. There's lots of like high-pitched squeals and sounds going on, and I'm imagining this is, I chose a song that didn't have any lyrics in it because I imagine it's almost more like a score, almost like narrating a scene, almost like a Stranger Things kind of scenario. And that's kind of the vibe I was kind of going for, because I had also was kind of flip-flopping on either like a Mogwai song or a Tobacco song, and something about it was like I really just kind of wanted a song that just like felt eerie, it felt creepy, that just like was a really good soundscape that was able to kind of convey the sort of mood I was kind of going for here. Yeah, because I kind of had, like I said, everyone else kind of said we had trouble picking songs for this, and this one just sort of embodied the sound I was looking for. Like I was like looking deeper, more into different artists that did Moog stuff, that maybe I could find someone that did something that did a little bit better. I was trying to find some newer artists, and it just, at the end of the day, I just kind of stuck with the King. And so this is the one I went with.
When this came across, I was like, oh, it's the Adventure Zone song. And then when I really listened to it, I was like, I see what Tyler's getting at here. And as I've read a little bit more about this album and about his intentions for it, I think you're absolutely right to pick it. Like you said, it's kind of about the occult. There's also apparently a note somewhere on the album jacket that says it is designed to accompany meditations on the mantra of the listener's choice, which is a very 1975 thing to put on your album jacket. He just seems like a super weirdo dude who wanted to make like an album of even weirder music under a fake name. I'm also fascinated by the fact that in 1969 he put out a series of albums in the same year, 12 albums, one for each sign of the zodiac.
Also like an innovator in plant music, which you have your plants listen to that help them grow, which is also a whole other thing.
He really does seem like the kind of composer who would be like very into being a part of this challenge. Like, this seems right up his alley, and his music definitely fits this mood very well. I don't know, it almost feels too good, though. Like, the Ouija board is broken, and Tyler's out here, like, summoning the spirits with his synth. I think it fits the majority of the challenge. I'm not sure about the broken part. But again, we never really specified what that means, so I guess you're in the clear.
It broke, and then the Demogorgon came from the upside down, and then the kids had to run away.
Yes, this is like your Stranger Things spinoff, Occult Edition.
I agree. I think this song perfectly outros any kind of spiritual, particularly dark spiritual show. I don't want to name any popular Netflix shows that it probably works on a good level for, but no, I think that's why it fits the challenge really well. I'm not like, I don't know how this is going to work on the playlist, but I say that like every other episode. I'm not really sure how this is going to fit on the playlist. And then as soon as we have a guest like Michael or somebody come on, they're all like, yeah, but you know what? That Deja Vu song, that song smacks. And I'm like, that one? That's the song? but I know, I think this is a fantastic song for a challenge that you set up and then forgot about.
Sick burn!
Got him.
All right, now it's time for notable B-sides. These were songs that were so close to getting picked, but didn't quite make it. Does anybody have any notable B-sides this week?
I really only have one, which I really thought I was going to go for, but ultimately went in a different direction. Damn These Vampires by the Mountain Goats.
Oh, Mountain Goats. They need to be on this playlist.
Mountain Goats do need to be on this playlist, although I was shocked. Mountain Goats songwriter and mastermind John Darnielle has written an entire album about tarot cards, but not about Ouija boards.
Also wrestling, but we all need to get it.
Also wrestling and being a goth in the 80s. He has very diverse influences.
This week, Sun Smells Too Loud by Mogwai, Baptism by Crystal Castles, Parable 3000.
Ooh, Crystal Castles would have been so good for this.
Yeah. I was thinking about it. It was a little too much. It was a little too intense for it. I wanted something that was a little more chill. Parable 3000 by Exploding Star Orchestra, Theme number 68 by Pie Corner Audio, Spaceman, Mystery of the Terror Triangle by The Night Monitor, Plans by KNV, and Re-Murdered by Mogwai. 2 Mogwais this week.
I don't really have any notable mentions this week. It was a really heartfelt pick for me, and I kind of like was thinking about picking other songs, but then I decided that it wasn't the right choice. I should go with the way my heart felt, so don't really have any B-sides this week.
Well, Tyler, if people want to enter the spirit realm with you, where can they do that?
Hey everybody, if you want to play Yu-Gi-Oh! In the Shadow Realm, you can find my design and illustration at rootpets.club, and as always, you can find me on the socials as Rootpets Club on Instagram and Twitter.
Sean, if people want to break on through to the other side with you, where would they do that?
You can find me on Instagram at TallySean.
And if you want to go down the rabbit hole with me, you can follow me on Twitter at TC Olmstead. And all of these songs will be on the official No Repeat podcast playlist on Apple Music and Spotify. We'll be back next week with another episode of No Repeat.